Okay, so part two, passive oxygenation. This term is unfamiliar to how many of you? Raise your hand if the term passive oxygenation is unfamiliar. Nobody. Well, that's quite a change just probably in the last year. So we're going to give oxygen to this patient two different ways. How many of you have two oxygen trees in all of your ED rooms? Not many of you, so about a third. So one nice thing, and I'll show this in the last slide, is they make a double tree that plugs into one wall outlet. So you don't have to remodel your ED, you just have to buy these double trees that will allow you to run two. So of the two ways, one is the bag valve mask, the other is the nasal cannula. The nasal cannula is your first priority. So you want your RTs, your nurses, your staff to know that if somebody starts crumping, the very first action is to throw a nasal cannula on them and turn it to 15. And when you first do this, RTs will freak out, their eyes up, they'll say, no, that can only go up to 5 liters or 6 liters or whatever. So a little bit of education is helpful with your RT staff. Now they make a high flow nasal cannula. So this is, you can use a regular nasal cannula, but because of the softness of the tubing, you're not delivering the true 15 liters. Some is basically restricted flow because of the design of the tubing. There is high flow nasal cannula tubing that can deliver 15 liters per minute. So my RT manager says that that high flow nasal cannula only costs about 30 cents more than the regular nasal cannula. So what we've done is we have one of these at every oxygen tree in every room with the bag valve mask. So on every oxygen tree is this high flow nasal cannula, and this is what we use for all intubations that we don't predict are going to be difficult. And I'll pass this around, you can take a picture of it to show your RT manager. So basically that's the oxygen tree, we've got the bag valve mask, we've got our nasopharyngeal airways, oropharyngeal airways, and our high flow nasal cannula. So that's priority number one, is getting that on. And so let's look at some studies here. This is a study done in 1988, and again, look at the time it takes for us to change our practice. So this was kind of a wimpy study where they took healthy subjects, which were American Society of Anesthesia Class 1, so normal airways, healthy subjects, and basically they put them on a succinylcholine drip, and they randomized them to either no ventilation for all of them. Half of them got oxygen at 3 liters per minute, and the other half got no oxygen at all. And basically what they showed is that none of the patients that were getting 3 liters per minute, they cut it off at 10 minutes. So at 10 minutes, none of them had gone below 98% with just a nasal cannula through that. That's no ventilations for 10 minutes. The SATs were still 98% or better. So, and those subjects that did not have supplemental oxygen, they only went about 6.8 minutes before their SATs dropped below 98, and that's where they cut it off. So that was kind of a cautious study on the effect of passive oxygenation. And this study's so interesting, they showed no benefit of pre-oxygenation, but again, these are healthy patients with healthy lungs, so I don't think that really applies to most of our patients. This graph here is important. So what we're demonstrating here is oxygen saturation on the left-hand side and time on the bottom. And look at the difference just between a normal adult, which is on the far right, and an obese adult. These are basically, not sick, so essentially healthy normal adult and healthy obese adult. Look at the difference in the shape of those graphs in terms of their desaturation. And so if you look at 6.8 minutes at the bottom there, that's essentially where the SATs drop below, say, 96, 97% in a normal 70 kilo adult. But the graph is much different when you're talking about an obese, and also kids fall off quickly. And if you're ill, look at the difference between the normal 70 kilo adult and the moderately ill 70 kilo adult. Your apnea time is much shorter. So this is my favorite study. I just like the title, Apneic Oxygenation in Man. So this is from 1959. Some crazy anesthesiologist basically intubated these patients, paralyzed them, and didn't give them a single breath for an hour. No ventilation at all. All I did was take a little feeding tube and dropped it in the center of the ET tube at like 3 liters per minute. And all of his studies, all of his patients, none of them had desaturation after an hour with no ventilation. Now, he did not report their pH or their CO2, but basically there was no desaturation at all with just that little amount of oxygen. And this is why. Oxygen will go down its gradient. It will get across the alveolar barrier, it will oxygenate the blood. So if you can get oxygen into the dead space, it will go down its diffusion gradient and it will deliver oxygen to the tissue. Now the CO2 is going to build up and the pH is going to drop, but that's the key behind passive oxygenation.